morning, everyone. My name is Paul Perdue, and I am the infrastructure nerd. And today we are talking about Tabs3 Connect. Tabs3 Connect is a web-based or app-based way to get to your data that's in PracticeMaster and also in Tabs from the outside, from a coffee house, from home, from your car. Any device that's got an internet connection can take you to your Tabs3 and PracticeMaster data, and I should say parts of it, because it is 6 functions that come straight from Tabs3 and PracticeMaster. It is free, but it is part of Platinum. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now I want to do a little housekeeping, and I want to show this picture that represents what you will see on the right-hand side of your screen if you haven't already closed it. By pressing this little button here at the top that looks like an arrow pointing to the right, you will be able to slide this box out of the way because it may be covering up part of my screen now and you want to see everything. When you do that and slide this box out of the way, this button here will turn into arrows, a button that looks like an arrow pointing to the left, and clicking it again will cause this box to slide back out, and then you'll be able to use the control panel. Probably the only reason you want to use the control panel is to type a question here where it says enter a question for staff. Leanne, our humble moderator, is moderating and monitoring those questions, and so she will interrupt me at an appropriate time and ask your question on your behalf. If you're feeling bold, you don't have to slide this out to type your question. You can just click this button that will always be visible, and it looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upwards in front of it, and it means, wait for it, raise your hand. So if you raise your hand, again, Leanne will notice that, and at a time when it's appropriate, she will interrupt me and let me know that I have a question, and then she'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. When you've got it done, answered with all the follow-up questions that you may have, we'll just leave you unmuted. We will then mute you back up so that you can continue eating lunch. Now, I normally say that when we do our virtual user group meetings. Maybe it's a little bit too early for lunch. I'm not used to these early morning things. We only do these once a month. Yet we have 3 virtual user group meetings, 1 for Tabs, 1 for PracticeMaster, and 1 for World Docs. So without any further adu, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to go here. Now you'll notice I'm going into a web browser. Tabs3 Connect will work on any internet-connected device, and it does so through the browser. Now, some people groan when they hear that because what they really want is an app, they think. But I think you'll find that this is so well designed that you won't be able to tell the difference between being in the Safari browser on an iPad or an iPhone and being in an application. Or being in Tabs3 Connect. They act the same. They've done a lot of work to make buttons operate effectively and not do some of the browser-related things that sometimes you can get in a poorly designed application. So therefore, I'm going to go to www.tabs3connect. I'm going to cheat and highlight that in my list. And this is the sign-in screen. Now, a little bit of background information before we sign in. Your data lives on your server. It is protected by the security that is already in place on your server. When I go to Tabs3 Connect, I am going to a web server that's backed up by a second web server in Lincoln, Nebraska. And when I do that, I am merely going there for 2 purposes, authentication and routing. In other words, when I sign in as paul.perdue@attorneycomputersystems.com with my secure password, and a very strong password, I might add, I am then being routed back to my server, which happens to live in Atlanta, Georgia, but that's just because we have a hosted provider and our server is an off-site server. When I'm routed there, it then displays pages that come from my server. My answers or clicks or whatever I'm requesting is routed back to my server. My server handles that request and then sends back the appropriate page. So the web server that lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, where Tabs3connect.com lives, excuse me, is only for routing. it does not contain any data. That's an important thing to understand. The data is coming from my server, and if you've got Tabs3 Connect running, it is coming from your server. Nothing is staying in the cloud. The only time this information is ever in the cloud is when it's going from your server to your iPad or your iPhone or whatever device you have that you're getting this information from. When you then send another request back, more information will come out over the internet just long enough to get it to your device. Now, what that means is there's none of the inherent security risks that you might have with data that lives in the cloud. Nothing has to be synced. Nothing has to be batched back and forth. It is all real time. As you'll see in just a second when we enter a fee, that fee, the minute I hit the submit button, is in my Tabs3 back at my server in my office. And that is significant. Now I'm going to sign in with my secure password. I say that because if you're using passwords that are just letters or just numbers, or they're not long enough, or they don't have any capital and lowercase letters, you are going to have to use a different password for Tabs3 Connect because of the fact that we're out there on the cloud and anybody can get to tabs3connect.com. The people at STI have affected some more tightly secure password restrictions than they have in the regular software. When it says remember me, it is only remembering my email address, and that's also important to note. Somebody can't pick up your iPad, go here, and have it log me in automatically. It still requires that I authenticate myself every time that I sign in. And there it is. Now, what you'll notice two things right off if you're paying attention or you're observant. One, you'll notice there are 6 functions. This is not Tabs and PracticeMaster on the internet. This is 6 very important functions that we have taken, or that STI has taken and put into Tabs3 Connect. But it's not everything. You can't print bills from here. You can't write accounts payable checks. You can't do a lot of things. But the things that attorneys want to do, or paralegals, or anyone who's accessing the system, when they're out of the office, are the things that you'll find here. The other thing you'll notice is that these are PracticeMaster things. Now, fees, you may say, and costs are Tabs3 things, but those of you who have PracticeMaster know that you also have access to fees and costs in PracticeMaster. These are PracticeMaster functions. Contacts, clients, Matter Manager, that's directly out of PracticeMaster. Calendar, of course, is something that you manage within PracticeMaster. So why do they call it Tabs3 Connect? Well, because Tabs3 PracticeMaster Connect was taken? No, that's a joke. Because Tabs3 PracticeMaster Connect was a mouthful? Yes. People know the name Tabs3. It is a more recognized brand, and so the people at STI decided to call this Tabs3 Connect. Now, that also hints at the fact that this is going to grow significantly and rather quickly. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not making promises there. I just know what their plans are, and I know that this is a big part of their strategy to continue to rule the billing and practice management market. For those of you who don't know, Tabs is used in 35% of the firms in the country with between 1 and 50 attorneys, which I think is a hugely significant statistic. But the point is, it's not Tabs3 stuff. It's mainly PracticeMaster stuff. But of course, an attorney or a paralegal that's out on the road isn't really interested in printing bills or printing accounts payable checks. They're interested in looking things up. Now, these 3 functions are down here. As soon as I go into one of them, you have the same 6 functions, and did I say 3 before? I stumbled. The same 6 functions that you had on your main screen are replicated up here no matter where you are in the software. So you can always jump back and forth between any of these 6 functions just by clicking these buttons, or if you're confused about what they represent because they don't have the words associated with them, so until you get used to what the icons mean, you may want to go back here by clicking this Tabs3 Connect logo, and it'll take you back here. So again, when I go into the Matter Manager and pull up Purdue Law, we always pick on the Purdue boys, it finds Purdue Law and lets me choose it. Now that's important to note right there. If I were to type something that was in the work description here, I would find potential clients that way. In other words, I would be able to look people up by more than just the number or the name search. That's not the way PracticeMaster works unless you've got it set up in a specific way, but it is the way the Matter Manager works here on the web. Now, I may be wrong about that. It may be true that in the Matter Manager here you can type those things, but I think actually what it does when it takes you to All Matters is it just takes you to the lookup list, and then you have to know how to search by something other than the name and the number. Whereas here on the web, you just type something that's either in the name or the number directly, or you type something that's in the work description or one of the miscellaneous lines, and you'll find it. Now again, we're going to go back to Purdue Law Offices. Now, I just showed you Purdue Law Offices in the Matter Manager on the desktop version of PracticeMaster, and here's Purdue Law Offices in the Matter Manager on the Tabs3 Connect version of Matter Manager. It looks pretty much the same. It's organized a little bit differently. Here's all activity, which is what we were looking at. Here's the billing summary. Here's the calendar. Here's contacts. Same sorts of things you have over here in the desktop version, just different orientation. In other words, different buttons instead of a drop-down like you had in the desktop version. You can scroll off the screen and see things like, you know, other files, phone and email, journal fees, all that stuff. If we go here then, this is the calendar, and this is what's going on with me today. Now, those of you who know me know that I'm very anal retentive, so you may see some strange things on my task list, like, you know, oiling my clippers so that when I shave my beard, it will be precise. These are very important things to me, but these are the things I have left to do today. This is my task list. I can view my regular calendar this way. I can view it in a number of different ways, day, week, and month. I can change it to what's called an agenda, which is what it defaults to, and I think maybe the only view you can see on a phone. We'll talk about that in a second. And that's more of a what tasks and what appointments do we have today, but more in a printed list. Now, one thing that's important to note here, if we have a day that has more stuff than will fit, like this one right here, in the desktop version of PracticeMaster, if we go to my calendar, we'll see that that day ends up with kind of a scroll. Now, it doesn't have it here. Let's see if we can find one that does. Here's one that does. And you end up with this little scroll between the items in the day. That's fine, but I really like this a lot better, where it just makes your day big enough to display the full name and all the information without having to bunch it up and without having to scroll. I think that's kind of cool, just a personal preference. Now, here's a huge, huge difference between syncing your calendar with Outlook and syncing your contacts with Outlook, as you'll see in a minute when we look at contacts, and Tabs3 Connect. When I sync my calendar with Outlook, I am syncing my calendar with Outlook. When I am connecting through Tabs3 Connect, I'm looking at anybody's calendars that I want to look at within the system. So if I put Mary Jo's username in here also, or select her from the drop-down, I am now looking at both mine and Mary Jo's calendars at the same time through a remote access called Tabs3 Connect to my data. That's something that you haven't been able to do before unless you were using something like Remote Desktop Connection to get to your regular desktop PracticeMaster. So this, I think, is a huge benefit of being able to, of Tabs3 Connect, the fact that you are able to see tasks and calendar items that are not just yours. The same applies to contacts. If I look at my contacts, I see Mary Jo and Candace and Brent and Mike and Eric. But if I look at all contacts, I'm looking at all the firm's contacts. Now, some of you are in firms that are rather large. And so if you were to take all the contacts and put them on your phone, they would be bigger than the amount of space you have in your phone, quite possibly. Whereas this is not going to your phone, so I can look at any contact within my system without having to worry about which ones I've synced to my phone. Now, if you're out on the road and your receptionist or your legal assistant calls you and says, you need to call this guy because Bob's on vacation this week, and I didn't get his number, but he needs to talk to you about something right away that he normally would talk to Bob about. That person very well might not be in your contact list on your phone, but their phone number is going to be accessible here. Something else that's pretty cool is that if we go to the records and highlight the address, you'll notice it doesn't have a button that says map like the old version of PracticeMaster, but if you highlight the address and click it, it loads up whatever your default mapping operation is on your device. Here it's Google Maps in a browser, but on my iPad it's just the app for Google Maps and takes you there. Very, very cool. Can't tell you how many times I've used this just to find out where I'm going. Now, these two things in Tabs3 Connect do not excite me. Now, I know that there's somebody here from a certain firm in Chicago where the attorneys actually put expenses in when they go down to the Champaign office. Is it Champlain or Champaign? And so this does excite them, the ability to add expenses. In my world and in most of my clients' world, it's fees you're looking to enter, okay? But there are some people that do use this. I have, as I mentioned, at least one client that has attorneys that go down to a different office and then they directly put in their, I don't know if they're using this part of Tabs3 Connect, but I know that they do keep track of their mileage and make their entries directly into Tabs when they get back. So that would be of interest to them. This is clients. And again, this doesn't interest me either because the information that I can get here, I can also get here. And this information to me is much more significant because it shows me all sorts of things wrapped together into this Matter Manager screen, where this screen here only shows me the client information. So although I'm not excited about these two things, I have a couple clients that have found reasons to use them. I think that this serves our purpose for client information, but occasionally we do have people that want to put costs in. This is a big reason a lot of people get Tabs3 Connect. Now, it's cool to have the calendars and the contacts and the matters. That, to me, is, I use it a lot. And I don't actually enter time from the road, so I don't use this very much. But a lot of our clients have put it in for this. And it is extremely simplified. If you've entered time into PracticeMaster or you've entered time into Tabs, it's not as streamlined as this. And it's not going to be simply because of the inherent limitations of doing it that way. But here, I'm logged into Tabs3 Connect, so it knows who I am, and I am linked to a timekeeper, my timekeeper number, so I don't even get asked what timekeeper it is. I had Purdue Law Offices up in the Matter Manager, so it assumes that's who I'm entering the time for. Of course, I can change it just by clicking this and changing the client. It assumes today, because if I'm out on the road using Tabs3 Connect and I'm entering time, it's probably time for something I just did. It assumes a transaction code that it would in the regular version, but I can change it, or I can just type if your regular one defaults to a blank one. So really, technically, all I have to do is put in the amount of time and type. Now, Leanne's going to make a note to not bill Purdue Law for a telephone conference, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to save this. And you'll notice it says saving record, and then I'm going back over here, and I'm going to actually pull up Purdue Law, and I'm going to go over to fees, and there's an entry for a telephone conference for today for 0.25 hours, $100 an hour, $25, okay? Yes, those of you who are looking at this, we do give my brother David a special rate. But that happened the instant I hit submit in Tabs3 Connect. Huge, huge to a lot of people. Now, one thing to keep in mind or keep track of, choose a metaphor as I mix them. When we set these things up, this is my user setup. It's very, very simple to set up. You go into Platinum, you go into Tabs3 Connect, you say you want it, you define the amount of time for a timeout, and you start the service. That's it. That's how you'd start Tabs3 Connect. But when I go into the user field and pull up Purdue and go over to Tabs3 Connect settings, one of the things I can do is I can define where they land after they log in. So I would say that 20 or 30% of our clients have had us change this to new fee, because when an attorney in a firm that's using this primarily for billing, fee entry, time capture, logs into Tabs3 Connect, that's probably where they want to go. I go to the main menu, as you saw, the home. You can also go to the Matter Manager or the calendar, but we do have a lot of people that have had us configure it so that it goes straight to the new fee. Very, very cool. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and I am going to get back here. I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to kind of hope. I'm going to change my settings so that I'm looking at the phone site, and you'll notice it's weird because it's not designed to be on a tablet-type screen, but I'm going to make my screen look like a phone, and they have taken a lot of care to make this look good and lay out differently on a phone than it would on a tablet. You'll notice these icons are bunched together to line up properly and to look good, but to still take as little real estate as possible. You'll notice that instead of the buttons we had for all activity versus billing summary versus calendar, we now do have a drop-down, and if I change it, it changes this, and of course this is laid out to look like a phone, to be sized properly on a phone. I'm going to take it back up to the full site, and of course I haven't changed it to the full site, so I'm going to do that. And here's what it's laid out to look like on a tablet. Two things I didn't touch on. These are my overdue alarms. These are today's alarms. You have those two choices. And this is eNote. Now, if people are using eNotes within PracticeMaster, this is an extension of that. Leanne, would you go to our PracticeMaster and send me an eNote, please? Funny story. This was being demonstrated in Lincoln, Nebraska last year, about a year ago, maybe 13, 14 months ago. Bruce, the product manager, was on stage. He was showing this, and he made the mistake of showing the eNote feature first, and so he just kept getting more and more eNotes in his PracticeMaster. Now, this is my regular eNote coming through PracticeMaster, and I'm going to just close that. And if I refresh this, here it is in PracticeMaster. And you'll notice that this little 1 indicates, just like icons do on iPhones and iPads, they have something to indicate how many you have. This one indicates that I have 1 eNote. Now, last thing, Logout. You may have noticed, you may not have, when I was back in the configuration, I was able to tell how long I wanted to be the default before it timed out within activity. Mine was set to 30. What that means is if I set my iPad down and walk away and leave it for 30 minutes, when I come back, it will want me to log back into Tabs3 Connect before it does anything. That's a safety feature, but you should not rely on that. You should log out when you are not using it. If you do set your iPad down to go pick up your coffee or to go to the restroom or whatever, and you leave it on a table, hopefully with other people there, but we won't go there, you want to log out because logging out is your best bet that nobody else will ever have any access to any information that's in your system. So that's there. Now, a couple caveats. I mentioned one of them before. This is a Platinum or Platinum SQL feature. It's free. It's automatically included, but with those levels. So if you don't have Platinum or you don't have Platinum SQL, you will not have Tabs3 Connect. The other caveat is that, at least for now, and you didn't hear me say that, but at least for now, you have to have both Tabs3 and PracticeMaster. And I don't know that that's ever going to change. I know that we as dealers have complained about it. We think that there is a large population of our audience that has Tabs3 but doesn't have PracticeMaster, and they want to be able to enter time, and they don't care about the PracticeMaster only features. But that has not changed, and I have no idea whether it's going to change. So for now, you have to have Tabs3 and PracticeMaster. You have to have Platinum or Platinum SQL. Leanne, are there any questions?
No questions, Paul.
Okay. If you think of questions after the fact, my simple email address, most of you know my hard one, paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com, but that's hard to type and hard to remember. So you can also reach me at paul@paulpurdue.com. And if you just remember that Purdue is spelled like the school, not the chicken, and if you're from our area, then you probably know that that's P-U-R-D-U-E, then you will always know my email address, paul@paulpurdue.com. Send me those questions if you think of them after the fact, after you hang up, or maybe you're just shy. But that's it. Everybody have a good afternoon, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.